how do you encourage that in an organization? What do you do?
You have to start at the top. I mean, when the top starts it, right, the rest follows. And there can be obviously resistance. It's not just one, conversation. This just becomes part of the culture, right? And I mean, for us, we believe every American deserves affordable broadband. Well, that then look at America and look at our makeup, right? The broadband industry needs to be more reflective of the makeup that we're trying to connect to. How do we understand how to go into a particular area of ethnicity, if and market and create a trusting bond with them that they want to purchase our service for that particular ISP, if we don't understand anything about their culture? So I just, it's like, in a lot of ways, sometimes, when you look back and you reflect, it, hindsight's 2020, and it just seems like the obvious thing to do is have more lenses to look through. But I think, to Megan's point, you have to reflect on yourself, especially as a leader. And I think the right leaders do that a lot. Right. They're in fact, they're the most hard on themselves. Right. The competition is themselves in a lot of ways. So if they want to do something about it, what are they doing about it?
Yeah. And I would say we talk a lot about trusted messengers. Right. And so, Brian, I absolutely commend going into a tribal nation. And it takes a lot of, approaching that with humility. Right. That
Yes.
We are coming in and we're coming in to listen. Because when we're approaching communities that are different from us, that look different from us, we're not a trusted messenger. You have to establish that trust. And it does take work and take effort, especially, with people of color, communities of color, and absolutely with tribal nations. There has been so much distrust and historical, oppression and backtracking and, breaking contracts and as all of it, right? We know this history. So it does come with that, humility, and you have to listen. And I would say that for internal too, right? Listen to what employees are saying. I recall in a past company, we had a harassment training, which was great. I was glad we did it, but it had nothing to do with how that company functioned, right? We didn't have the UPS man coming that people hit on. That was not reflective of how our company worked. And I had tried to bring this up, and, I met resistance from the leadership, and they weren't ready to listen to how it actually was. So I think it whether you're going into a new community or whether you're having discussions internally, it's a lot of listening and being open to hearing hard things, right? I'm sure they didn't want to hear that the company I was at functioned that way. And it is, instinct reaction to be defensive. But
do you think though that there are, to that point about the training? I mean, obviously in tech and in broadband, big companies, there are a lot of automated, go through this online course, and a lot of people, it's check. I mean, you're just basically clicking the buttons as you go through, right? It's not really, I would argue, it's probably not doing a lot to help.
And then everyone jokes about it at the end of the day.
Yeah, everybody jokes but and I guess maybe that's saying, have we swung the pendulum too far in trying to, the way we're trying to do it, versus, to your and Field's point and Brian's, like, do we take a different approach of trying to drive diversity and inclusivity, where it's not about a test you take online, it's more about behavior and what you can do to help adjust
of course,
that.
Nick, we always swing the pendulum too far. I mean, we're Americans. We go big or go home, and that's our problem. And what I see with so many Fortune 500 companies, is get that chief diversity officer, in place, to only see that person typically leave. I mean, Field, you probably have some stats around it, right? They seem to be in place maybe a year.
Yeah.
And then it's someone else. And it's like, so you guys need to go get the person, of color, the minority, to actually go talk about this. Is, I don't know, it's kind of comical. And obviously we enlisted Field's help, really, because it was more about Fields is being able to touch and work with a lot of different companies to see what's working and what's not working. and has been doing this now for a while. And it was more of taking a softer approach. And it was like, Fields, you come on and you help me. You know what I mean? Because like, if we're going to get this done, it's got to be me. It has to start with me. You support me, but you don't need to be the person out there telling everyone in our organization how to be more diverse. Right.
I wish this was Zoom and we had the little clappy hands up in the corner. Put them up there right now, Brian. I would agree exactly what you said. I would say this for people of color, for people of women, it should not be on that group to educate the people doing wrong. Mm-hmm. That should be coming from the people in a position of power, because those are the people that are listened to. Right. So absolutely. And it does sometimes take a wonderful person like Fields to bring this to the attention. But the onus is not on that person, that minority, that group, to then educate,
It's 50-50. And Nick, to your question, a lot of it, people just don't know about this industry. It's not that they don't want to, they just aren't aware. So again, it's been this type of industry for years, right? So now there's a problem that showed up. Hey, if we have another pandemic, and odds are we're probably going to have something else happen, right? Okay, if we have to go virtual, what happens? And everybody saw that gap. So what's brilliant about this is that when I'm talking to the schools about, opportunities, what's out there, and there's typical jobs that people go to. But now let me tell you about this, right? And Brian and I talked about internships. Let me just show you something else, right? Doesn't mean you're going to do it. But now, hey, you remember when you had your back up against the wall at the Burger King? Yeah. Okay. This company fixes that. Really? It's you see the light. Really? Yeah. And they'd like to show you what, since you're, and again, it comes down to leadership. Leadership matters. Everybody goes, well, no, leadership matters. It does. It really does. When you go out and you're going to go into you're going to talk to, normally you're going to talk to a sovereign nation and talk to the chief. And a lot of times, even though you're talking to the chief, that person may not be the leader, right? It may not. It's just, it could be a figurehead. It happens. You go into certain neighborhoods and you're talking to the mayor, and after you find out it's Mrs. Johnson who runs a church that's running, she runs the show here, right? So you can, she bakes pie and all that. She's real quiet. But guess what? When she's sitting in church and she goes, no, everybody in the church says, no, and you wonder why. Okay, I convinced the pastor. I convinced him. And Mrs. Johnson did this, and she walked out. It was over. So part of this is that leadership now, hey, you know what? Here's a company. Here's an industry that you probably don't know about, but this is what they do. Oh, man, you mean my Wi-Fi and my mother's house can work? Yeah. So now you start to see that, where now you start to introduce people to an industry. And when you do that, you're going to see some, everybody that comes to you is not going to be great, but you're going to see some really gifted people that just didn't. The kid was a farmer before, but guess what? He's got the knack to do this. Now you start to see this skill set. And now when this happens, now, hey, you know what? We're not going to go into panic mode. Through Bonfire, we've got the fiber out here that, okay, if we want to go virtual, no big deal. Nobody's freaking out anymore, right? No big deal. You've got HBCU campuses that I've been on the phone with, they said, hey, how's your broadband? It's great. Oh, but, I can't walk from this building. Well, it's not great. I think Brian and I were on a call with a guy, and he's like, man, the broadband kind of stinks here. Yeah, because, now you see, his Zoom was real choppy, right? So now you start to see, okay, what's the opportunity? And now it's that introduction to let people know that you're open to even have this conversation. And that's the heroic part of it, that you're open to have this conversation, you mean it. And then maybe a year or two from now, you've got folks that now start to see this. They're bringing this to the communities that they know. Hey, I know that you're at Akron, but this community over here, and you wouldn't even know, this community over here really needs it. My cousin's over here. So that's the leadership. That's the part where, you have to have somebody guiding the ship. And everybody says, well, it's free. No, you can say that all you want. Let things go bad. Everybody's going back to, okay, what do we stand for?